Hi, Derek Whittaker from Blue Sky Factory. I've been asked to do a video on the Great Wealth Transfer and do it in 15 minutes or less, which is a bit of a challenge because normally I've done that in seminars and it's taken over 90 minutes. So we'll give it a go, shall we? But in summary, the whole principle of the Great Wealth Transfer comes from this scripture in the Bible. It talks about a benevolent man leaves wealth for his children's children, but the wealth of the wicked is stored up for the righteous. And what we're seeing right now, due to the geopolitical events that are going on and taking shape, we're seeing this great wealth transfer happen, which is incredibly exciting. And I've been asking my students, how will you set yourself up to take advantage of this great wealth transfer? I pose the same question to you. Well, where did it come about? Well, it's really hard to find a starting point, but let's start with that conflict that was known in Europe where Russia invaded Ukraine. And in that conflict, it was a bit of a wake-up call to Russia and nations associated with it through the BRICS organization, BRICS being Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, and a lot of partner nations, that if they could, that being America, put sanctions, economic sanctions on Russia, what could it do to them? And of course, America is the biggest economy in the world, so we have to discuss this. Now, put your political views aside for a moment. Let's just talk in terms of, hey, what's actually going on? Let's keep opinions neutral if we can, because if we don't, we could actually filter out opportunities here. And that's what's interesting. Things started to change when Trump came along in his campaign in 2024. What he was looking at is making promises to the public that, you know what? I'm going to make crypto great. I'm going to fire Gary Gensler, who was the head of the SEC, the Security Exchange Commission, the regulator, and I'm going to put in someone who's crypto friendly, and we, America, will become the crypto capital of the world.
On day one, I will fire Gary Gensler and appoint a new SEC chairman.
Interesting that that was going on, because while this was all happening, and nations are reconsidering, hey, what are we going to do if we're sanctioned and caught out of what the big cross-border payment system called SWIFT is concerned? If we're cut out of that, what are we going to do? And so while this is going on, an agreement came up in June 2024 under the Biden administration of the petrodollar agreement, an agreement that America had had for over 50 years with Saudi Arabia. In that agreement, what was happening was that all oil around the world would be sold in US dollars, and in exchange, America would provide Saudi Arabia with military protection. That agreement was not signed again in June of 2024 by, of course, Saudi Arabia. So this threw a big spanner in the works for the United States, because if you have a currency that's always in demand to pay things for, namely oil, which, let's face it, as we've highlighted recently, makes the world go round, it's the energy of the economies, this is a big, big concern. If people have to do it in US dollars in terms of doing those oil deals, you've got a currency that is in high demand. However, if that higher demand starts diminishing, we saw what happened. The Chinese were doing oil deals with the Arabs in yen, their local currency. Russia was also rumored to have been doing that through cryptocurrency and rubles. And of course, Putin had to put a bit of a stop to the fall of the ruble back when the sanctions first went on. What he did was significant. He put rubles back onto the gold standard. 5,000 rubles equaled 1 ounce of gold. So that changed the whole movement away, because back in 1973, President Nixon had depegged the US dollar from the gold standard. So suddenly you've got a currency that isn't backed by anything, and nations are wanting to drop it and not renewing the petrodollar agreement. And nations then moving back to gold standards. Zimbabwe was another one, with also a mix of gold, precious metals, and foreign currency backing the Zimbabwe. This was a big, big move in terms of how money moves and how money is actually backed by something, is valued, and how we use it as an asset or, of course, a means of exchange, a currency. So with all this going on, you can see with Trump's campaign, America's going to become the cryptocurrency of the world, and I'm going to fire Gary Gensler. Voters and investors got their attention. They're thinking, okay, because in the back of their mind, they're thinking, which government will ban cryptocurrency? Is this a legitimate currency? We've seen China do that to their citizens on many, many occasions. So, of course, as you know, Trump wins the election, and one of the first pieces of legislation that came out as far as economics was concerned was what we call the Genius Act. Now, the Genius Act was significant on three different levels. Number one, it legally recognized cryptocurrency. Okay, that was a tick in the box for a lot of investors who said, okay, now we've got a country or a political government that will recognize it and is actually going to accelerate it. Number two, what came out of that is it said that stablecoin issuers had to have their currency backed. You just couldn't make up this digital note out there on the internet. It actually had to, on the blockchain particularly, had to be backed by something. Now, this is a clever move by the Trump administration. What it said was, if you're doing like US dollars, you have to have those treasury bonds in a vault somewhere, and it's backed by something. So what they inadvertently did is put back demand on the US dollar. A clever move, even if it's not the nations of the world, it's crypto companies that could potentially be the biggest treasury note holders in this instance. Very, very clever move strategically. The third thing, which I think is one of the most significant parts that came out of the Genius Act, was this. Was that it actually allowed legally cryptocurrencies and fintech companies to be issuers of currency, a role that had always been reserved for a central bank. And that undermined and pulled the rug from, of course, the banking cartel. Wow, it was hugely significant as far as economics is concerned. Fast forward to 2026, and the Genius Act is being debated behind closed doors. Now, what is that about? Oh, sorry, I beg your pardon, the Clarity Act. The Clarity Act is behind closed doors. And what's going on there is they're trying to understand and get legislation as to how crypto can operate and where the banks fit in this. And behind closed doors, there's been a lot of arguing going on as bankers do not want crypto companies to have the ability to use their deposits to do staking and give rewards to the customers. Why? Because there could potentially be a mass exodus of customers leaving the banks and taking their money away from the banks to the crypto exchanges. If they do that, that affects the way banks can lend money out to the general population, and of course ends their whole deposits as far as those making a mass exodus is concerned. So there's been a lot of debate going on behind the scenes as to what's going on. And in addition, we see some of those crypto companies applying for bank licenses. So there's an amazing convergence of Wall Street money pouring into the space. We've seen applications for licenses and real big fights behind the scenes going on in terms of power and what they can and cannot do. And this is where the opportunities lie in terms of the wealth transfer. So, not only have we been teaching that, and it's not just crypto that we teach, okay, it's part of it. There are other asset classes where we've seen significant wealth growth for our clients. And this is what we've been highlighting, how to set, with the education, how to potentially set yourself up to, of course, take advantage of the wealth transfer. Also, we've taken for 14 years teachings that we've been doing for options trading. I love stock options trading, and there's huge opportunities there where we take an approach of running away from volatility. No. Why do that? That's what most investors do. They run for the hills. What we've done is embrace it and gone, where is the action? Where is the greed? Where is the fear in the market? Let's embrace it and potentially profit from it. That is a strategy that's been massively, massively popular amongst our students, and they've made good money out of it, some even in the 6 digits. So if that's of interest to you and how this whole perspective goes as far as the great wealth transfer is concerned, or you're interested in the stock options trading stuff, it doesn't matter what level you are. We start and assume you know nothing, all right? That way we're less likely to miss something. But we've worked with people who have experience in these areas before and seen them really prosper. If you'd like to find out more about this, by all means, you can watch more detailed video in the description box below. Have a look at that. Or you can contact me through the website blueskyfactory.com.au. That's blue without an E, blueskyfactory.com.au. Book yourself in for a free 15-minute consult. Love to help you and find out about your journey and where you're going. And I think we did that in less than 15 minutes. Talk to you soon.